the season of gratitude and plenty of snow, strong winds, and icy roads. You know what? Thanks, but no thanks.
Mother Nature rarely takes a holiday, and the storm is already moving into Colorado. Snow's already picked up in the metro area. It's been snowing heavily in areas like Fort Collins, Loveland, Longmont, where we expect well over a foot of snow. This storm coming at us from Utah into western Colorado. It slides into southeastern Colorado. It's out of here by this time tomorrow. But look off to the west. There's another storm just in time for the weekend. So an active weather pattern to be sure. Denver goes under a winter storm warning at 8 o'clock tonight. Even though the snow has already begun, travel's already impacted. We're seeing roads that are wet right now, but they will become icy overnight as we brace for 6 to 12 inches of snow. Our high today, 49. That is average. Yesterday we were in the mid 60s, and now it's heavy snow and difficult travel that will impact the scenario overnight tonight through the mid-morning time period. And even though some of you to the south will get a little break in the snow in the next couple of hours, between midnight and 6 a.m., snowfall rates up to 2 inches an hour are possible. So make those plans accordingly, because some of you, especially in the northern foothill areas, will see 15 to 20 inches of snow. In Denver for tonight, winter storm warning, heavy snow, 22 degrees, 6 to 12 inches of snow done by 2 o'clock tomorrow. A cold night tomorrow night with a low of 5. We're clear and cool Wednesday, beautiful holiday, 40% chance of snow on Friday. But next weekend looks great. I bumped temperatures up into the 40s, Kyle.
So we told our Marshall Zellinger to hunker down for the storm. He apparently thought we said bunker down, and Marshall fled to the bunker beneath City Hall, Denver's Emergency Management Operations Center. So Marshall, you are hunkering and bunkering.
2 floors below City Hall here at the City and County building, and I thought if we were going to be so far underground it would be warmer than anywhere else. I feel like we're on the surface. It is so cold to keep all the computers here cold and working. This operations center for the city of Denver is just getting underway. There's going to be about 10 to 15 people here throughout the night into the morning. One of my favorite aspects here is we have access to the Halo cameras, and you can keep an eye on the roads using the Halo cameras via Denver Police. This will come in handy overnight. They can direct Public Works to say, hey, we notice you haven't been plowing maybe these roads here. Could you help some resources in certain areas? This map is actually one of my favorite things down here that I haven't seen before. This gives an idea of how many police 911 calls there are and fire 911 calls there are currently pending versus dispatched, and we can see what some of the calls are here. 52 police calls are still waiting or have been dispatched on scene here, and then 11 are still waiting. That number may go up as the snow collects. And then over here, this is what they're going to watch mostly overnight. The number of XL power outages right now in the Denver metro area, there are 19.
Our eye, it's constantly on those power outages. And where are they? Are they in a senior community? Do we need to make sure we have oxygen available and things like that? Is it a hospital that is losing power? Do we need to move generators and commodities like that? So our eye, it's always on the power outages.
The purpose of this center in a snowstorm is to keep an eye on the safety needs of the people of Denver, and that is if there are power outages, does the city need to go in and help a certain population get warmth, get to shelter? And one other thing on this map that's a caveat for tonight only is this private venues event. It says the Cher concert is tonight, so they'll be keeping an eye near the Pepsi Center, Kyle. I know you're really interested in that. Should something happen around there, do they need help with Cher?
Sure. No, she must be protected at all cost, Marshall. Yeah. I wouldn't have thought about that, Marshall, that even if the power outages are very, very isolated, if they're in the wrong area, it could be a serious emergency for folks.
And during the bomb cyclone, I heard that they needed to get people from one shelter to another, and they actually used the Denver Sheriff's buses because that was the only resource that was available to the city at the time. They would have done private buses or something like that, but they'd make those decisions here. Hey, Denver Sheriff, you've got buses. We need to move people to a warm place. Let's do that right now.
Well, hopefully tonight they don't have to use the sheriff buses. That was bad. I shouldn't have said that. All right. Thank you, Marshall. Airlines are the ones that face off with frustrated travelers during the storm, although it's the maintenance workers out at DIA who do that lightning fast work to make sure that planes can be landing and taking off as safely and as soon as possible. DIA has 200 pieces of equipment specifically for its taxiways and runways. they can clear the tarmac in 15 minutes. That's what they told us today. This is pretty incredible considering the size of DIA. The pre-treatment plan is pretty similar to our roads and what CDOT does. They put down a liquid de-icer in sand to prevent the tarmac from icing. Although they did mention this is a mixture that's easier on planes than the road mix tends to be on our vehicles. And just like the road crews, they can't pre-treat the tarmac before the rain turns to snow because it'll just wash away. So this is the first snowstorm since state troopers admitted that they shared your frustration and confusion about the new traction law. I swear to you, we have tried to explain this new law a dozen times, and each time a bunch of you raised legit concerns about the way that it's worded. And at the end of last week, State Patrol told CDOT they need to rewrite their rules so that they're clear. Here's the deal. If you have four-wheel or all-wheel drive and tires with proper tread, you do not need chains. Two-wheel drive vehicles specifically need snow tires. That's the new law. You gotta have good tread on those as well. And it's only vehicles without all-wheel or four-wheel or snow tires. It's only those that need chains or a traction device.
The third largest November snow in Denver was 17.7 inches in 1979. The second largest right around Thanksgiving 1983, 21.5 inches. Stapleton struggled to clear its runways. The city threatened to tow abandoned cars blocking streets. And 9 News reporter Neil Brown made a sad discovery: the body of a man trapped in his car out by Byers. The biggest recorded November snow to hit Denver was 1946, 30 inches. The paper the next day brushed it off. Adams County News devoted about 3 inches to those 30, saying, quote, "The authorities of the city are to be highly commended for the really fine effort they made to clean up the streets."
Arapahoe County Clerk Joan Lopez just made it through running her first election as clerk, and she's already facing a call for her resignation. That, along with concerns from candidates of both parties and an ethics complaint. Well, now the clerk has gone underground. Her spokeswoman says Lopez is not doing any interviews anymore. Clerk Lopez's refusal to answer questions could actually be the least surprising thing about this situation, because it was Lopez's inability to answer our basic question about election fairness that increased concern as the votes were being counted.
I think it is very partisan right now as far as the political climate. I don't know how to answer that.
No more interviews, says her spokeswoman. Lopez, who is a Democrat, is being asked to resign by the Arapahoe County Republican Party, which is characterized her as being overly partisan and not competent for the job. Lopez is also facing an ethics complaint about her travel spending. 2 additional ethics complaints about partisanship were tossed out because they were not covered by the county's ethics code. Colorado prosecutors have been told to fix their mess. This is the sentencing issue that we told you about first. The state Supreme Court ruled that criminals have been being sentenced illegally to both prison and probation. It's supposed to be one or the other. Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser asked the court to reconsider, and he has now been rejected. So that means that thousands of people in prison in our state can ask for new hearings to get new sentences. Voters in Denver agreed to increase sales taxes to help feed hungry kids. 1 year later, millions of dollars have been collected, and not $1 has been spent to feed hungry kids. Our Anusha Roy looks at why.
In a city where 1 in 5 kids in Denver are struggling with hunger, 0 so far have benefited from some voter generosity from last year.
It has impacts on children's ability to pay attention in schools, on other chronic diseases.
Denver voters said yes to a slight sales tax increase a year ago. That so far has added up to around $8.5 million. That's now sitting in a special revenue fund because the commission for this issue is still working on their funding priorities as recently as Friday.
The commission has not yet fully established those outside of what's already included in the ballot initiative itself, which are healthy food for kids, related education, things such as food skills, nutrition, gardening.
That initiative was approved by voters 1 year ago. It went into effect in January. A fund was set up in March, and so far the only money spent has been on hiring staff starting in August.
It takes longer than I think we would all like to see it take.
Councilwoman Deborah Ortega is on the commission and said initiatives often take time to get up and running because they want to be responsible with tax dollars.
We don't want to hurry up and rush and not be able to be accountable to the taxpayers for how this money is being spent.
And make sure they're properly doing the bidding of voters who voted to feed hungry kids.
And so it could be school gardens. It really could be a lot of different things. And some of it will depend on what we hear from the community.
So that sales tax increase is roughly a penny for every $10 spent in Denver. So by the end of the year, that's going to add up to around $11 million. And the commission is hoping by early next year, they can finally open up the coffers here and have nonprofits, groups that work with kids actually apply for grants. And so they can actually start feeding children.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, nobody wants them to just like throw money out the door.
No.
But at the same time, you know, TikTok, how long can they just sit on the money?
Okay, so they're going to be getting this money for the next 9 years, and the only thing that's written into the ordinance is that they have to spend it by the end of 2029.
Oh, 2029.
2029, so we got some time.
Got some time. All right. Thank you, Nusha.
The big beast that used to rule the rails, there's only one left, and it's only in Colorado for a few days.
Look at that thing. Look at it, Jack. Isn't it amazing to watch it just come by you?
We'll look at Americans' special bond with trains. And a football rivalry that really blew up. That's what happens when you use dynamite. Next.
If you missed it, I highly recommend checking out the craziest college rivalry I had never heard of. It was the ultimate in dangerous pranks 1 century ago when students from the Colorado School of Mines used dynamite to try and blow apart University Hall at DU.
When you look at this building, you start to see that something had to be done to hold the building back together again. The history we have indicates that they put dynamite inside the building and lit it off.
Back then it was certainly clean fun, but I do think 20 sticks of dynamite is certainly, could be construed as excessive force.
Our Aaron Anderson's story remembers what happened next when DU students tried to get even, only to get captured and paraded through town like prisoners of war. All this action off the field, and in the end, very little action on the football field between the two teams. We have Aaron's full story posted on the next Facebook page. Almost 750,000 pounds of pure American locomotive. Big Boy is just that, the largest steam engine in the world. One of them is still running, and it rumbled across the plains east of Denver today. Union Pacific's taking it on tour this year to celebrate 150 years since the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. Coloradans came out to be reminded today of what we have always known about trains.
It's a train, huh? Biggest train in the world.
Before trains, a trip across America, coast to coast, took more than 4 months.
Yeah, isn't that neat?
The Transcontinental Railroad cut that trip to 3.5 days.
When it starts to move, it's incredible. And you can feel it, and your heart shakes, and your lungs feel funny, and it's so powerful. It's amazing.
The power of trains was making Americans separated by time and distance feel close. Tim and his grandson Jack, separated by time,
How does it sound when it moves?
are pulled close today.
I'm going to get her out.
Kim Helsey came to feel close to someone far away.
My brother lives in Kentucky, and that's what brought me here today, is to see this big boy for him. We grew up by a railroad track all of our lives. He loves trains. The boy he's crazy about trains.
You wonder what it looks like on the inside?
The tracks in Strasburg were lined with people waiting for a train to bring them closer to someone they love.
My dad used to take me all over the country when we were back in the Midwest, and we'd chase these steam engines all over the place. So this is my chance to honor him by coming out here.
Crossing miles and generations. That has always been the power of a train.
Big Boy heads north from Denver to Cheyenne tomorrow. Not certain if you want to be out in that weather, but its travel schedule is on 9news.com.
He was fighting cancer, yet he looked forward to every day.
The thing that really impacted Scott during his experience was the nurses. And nobody pays attention to the nurses, you know?
His legacy is support for the nurses who are with us in the most crucial times of life. That's next.
Scott Ferguson's life is not defined solely by how it ended. That was melanoma last April. His life may end up being defined by who he met at the end of it, some incredible nurses. And his wife told us how Scott was intent on giving back to those nurses when he was gone.
Scott was 49 going on 17 in so many ways. He was someone who loved the sunshine, loved the outdoors. He always lived outside. He didn't care about money or success, but he cared greatly about people. When I met him, I was probably in a crisis time in my own life. But after I got to know him, suddenly I found myself feeling better about myself and looking forward to getting up. And he always made me laugh. It was one of the most intense relationships I've ever had in my life. He was like so many people in Colorado who just love the sun, and you don't think that you're going to get cancer at 49 years old. He was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you all are doing well.
We went to UC Medical after his diagnosis. The thing that really impacted Scott during his experience was the nurses. And nobody pays attention to the nurses, you know? The entire time we were there, the nurses made us feel like it was a second home for him. He died the day after Easter. It was really Easter morning when they finally came in and told me that he wasn't going to make it. It was a very scary time, but Scott wanted to do something for all those people who he felt like had done so much for me. Scott really wanted to set up a scholarship fund to help people who have that calling to do something greater. And they were always there taking care of me too. And I can never say thank you enough times, you know. So this is kind of my life's calling.
More than $60,000 has been raised to support those scholarships for University of Colorado nursing students. We will return with a good reason to smile on this cold and soon-to-be snowy night. It is the first of your holiday fails, and this is a juicy one. Next. Each year we celebrate your family's holiday fails because it's the thought that counts. And Sydney gets us started for the year with the story of her dad's special Thanksgiving turkey. Sydney says Dad is convinced that the best way to brine a turkey is in juicy juice, the stuff they give kids. Sydney informs us that it's gross. So every year, Sydney's family all tries to hide the sauce from Dad. Share your family's holiday fail with us by emailing next@9news.com or use the hashtag HeyNext. If you're not going to send us pictures or videos, it better be as good as the Juicy Juice turkey. Ron writes in tonight about our coverage of Big Boy, the world's largest steam locomotive coming through Colorado. He says, it'd be nice if you mentioned Cheyenne, Wyoming rebuilt Big Boy and made all this possible. You're absolutely right, Ron. And there you go. I just mentioned it. Stay warm, snow tomorrow.